Yes, that is the one you will use, and I've already started the meeting, so you can join. Okay.
Hi, Faith.
Hello, how are you?
Good.
I'm also very well.
Nice.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the meeting. We are waiting for the rest of the participants to join us. So you're welcome. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the meeting. We are almost starting. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the first dialogue on agroecology and agrobiodiversity. This dialogue is hosted by the Inter-Sectoral Forum on Agroecology, Agrobiodiversity, in partnership with the Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries and Cooperatives, and the Ministry of Environment and Forestry, and non-state actors who are members of the forum. ISFAA is working towards mainstreaming agroecology, agrobiodiversity, and ecosystem services in the agriculture sector and landscapes. The forum aims at providing a platform through which stakeholders at the intersection of biodiversity conservation and agriculture production can interact to discuss, share knowledge and information, influence policy, fundraise, implement joint programs, and monitor and review progress of their actions. My name is Faith Gikunda, and I welcome you to actively participate in this dialogue. Kindly note that this dialogue will be recorded and are streaming live on ISFAA Facebook page and ISFAA YouTube channel. We encourage you to tweet using the hashtag agroecology and agrobiodiversity dialogues. The floor will be open for contributions in line with the topic. Please type your questions in the chat box and they will be answered real time on the chat, and a summarized response will be given after our speaker is done with the presentation. At this point, I wish to welcome Mr. Bob Aston to take us through a short icebreaking session. Welcome, Bob.
Thank you, Faith. So we want to do just a 2-minute icebreaker, and we've just shared the link on the chat. So on the chat, you can click on the link provided. Once you've clicked on the link, you'll be able to see what I've just projected. So you want to look at, when you think of a seed, what usually comes into your mind? So just click on the link, then you'll be able to type. For example, when you think of a seed, maybe what comes into your mind is food, is it agriculture, we already have someone who has said life. So when you think of a seed, what comes into your mind? At least we have 2 people who have added, both so far 2 people have added. We have someone who has said when they think of a seed, they think of life. We have someone who thinks of capital. We have food. We have genetic materials. We have beginning. So on the chat, we've just shared the link, so you can be able to click on the link. But at the same time, you can also use your mobile phone. So on your phone, just go to your browser. Then on your browser, you can be able to type slido.com. That is SLIDO.com. Then when you ask for the code that you'll enter will be 621-653. So you can use your mobile phone when you go to your browser, or alternatively, just click on the link provided. So far, we have responses from 7. When they think of a seed, they think of life. We have those who think of food. We have those who think of the future, genetic material, agriculture. we have regeneration, we have future, we have capital. We have 9 people so far have been able to try. Someone has also added on the chat live. So you can be able to click on the link that we just shared on the chat. Then you can be able to add your inputs. So majority so far have indicated when they think of a seed, they think of beginning. And you also have life. We have initial, agriculture. Only nine people have been able to add their input. Hopefully more people can be able to join. We have new life, we have regeneration, we have future, we have food, we have genetic material, we have birth. So we have 10 people, majority have indicated life. So we hope more people can be able to join maybe in the next 2 minutes before I hand over back to Faith. So maybe the next 1 minute, at least can be able to have more people can be able to add the input. When you think of a seed, what comes into your mind? You can also type on the chat. So majority have indicated when they think of a seed, they think of life and also beginning. Faith, I think you can just proceed now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Bob. Thank you for that interesting session. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to take this opportunity to welcome today's speaker. And our speaker today is Dr. Martin Oulu. Dr. Oulu will be dialoguing with us on a topic, namely seed governance, global to local contradictions. Dr. Oulu is a researcher and lecturer at the Department of Agriculture Economics at the University of Nairobi, and is also the coordinator of the Inter-Sectoral Forum on Agrobiodiversity and Agroecology, that is ISFAA, and is coordinating on behalf of GIZ. He received his PhD in human ecology from Lund University in Sweden. His research interests are transdisciplinary and include agroecology transformations, agrobiodiversity conservation, climate smart agriculture, environmental and climate change policy integration and mainstreaming, ecological equal exchange, nexus research, and environmental justice. Dr. Oulu is presently leading the Enhancing Sustainability and Resilience of African Cities through a water, energy, food nexus approach project under the International Science Council's leading integrated research to Agenda 2030 in Africa program. So, ladies and gentlemen, I take this opportunity to welcome Dr. Martin Oulu. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Faith, and everyone for joining us. Could you please share the slides?
Okay. Okay, I'm sharing the slide.
Great, I can see it. Can everyone see it?
Yes, we can see it.
All right, so once again, thank you very much for hosting this dialogue and for everyone who was able to join us. And thanks very much, Bob, for the icebreaker on what people, what comes to people's mind when they think about seed. So I'll just talk about seed governance and hope that we'll be able to share knowledge and learn one or two things about the issue of seeds. The next slide, please. Next slide. Okay, thanks. So yeah, I mean, from the icebreaker, it's clear that a seed, brings different things to people's mind. But a seed is just a propagative plant or animal material. And I think the key thing to stress here is the animal part. A lot of times when we think about seed, we only think about the plant, materials. And I wanted here in the introduction to sort of distinguish between peasant seeds and those seeds that you call those that are bred by plant breeders. So I wanted just to make that distinction between peasant seeds, those which come from populations that are managed by farmers, and then the sort of seeds that are bred by plant breeders. Next slide. Good. So we look at some of the key international agreements, the UN Declaration on Peasants' Rights. This is the latest, I think, internationally agreed document. The Sdgs, the ITPDRFA, and then the International Plant Protection Convention, although we won't go so much into that. The WTO's TRIPS, and then the UPOV Convention. Next slide. So the UN Declaration on Peasants' Rights was adopted by the UN in 2018, and it has some interesting things to do with seeds. Article 19 talks about the fact that peasants have the right to seeds, and this right to seeds include the right to protection of traditional knowledge, the right to equitably participate in sharing the benefits that are arising from these plant genetic resources, and the right to participate in the making of decisions on matters relating to conservation and sustainable use of plant genetic resources, but also the right to save, use, exchange, and sell their farm-saved seed or propagating material. What is interesting, if you look at this, the Declaration of Peasant Rights, is those sort of countries that either, did not vote on this declaration or abstained from, this declaration. The next slide. Good. So the SDGs is also a very important, international agreement. So goal 2 is focused on ending hunger, achieving food security, and target 2.5 of goal 2 states that by 2020, so that should have been by last year. It sought to maintain the genetic diversity of seeds, cultivated plants, and farmed and domesticated animals and their related wild species. Now, some of the indicators under target 2.5 are that the number of plant and animal genetic resources for food are secured, and the proportion of local breeds which are classified as being at risk, not at risk, or unknown, is sort of known. What is the proportion of these breeds? So the SDGs is also very important in terms of, giving us direction in terms of how we should look at seeds and how we should govern seeds. The next slide. So this is an FAO-led sort of treaty, international treaty on plant genetic resources for food and agriculture, which also seeks to conserve plant genetic resources for food and agriculture And it says that based on national legislation, the member countries are supposed to survey, inventory, and promote the collection of these plant genetic resources for food and agriculture. So this is very important because it then connects to some of the indicators on SDG 2. And then a key important thing about it is that the treaty covers farmers' rights, the responsibility of which lies with national government. So essentially, it's national governments that is supposed to ensure that farmers' rights are respected. But what are these farmers' rights? Go to the next slide, please. The conference resolution 5894, which is sort of an annex to ITP-GRFA, states that farmers' rights are rights which are arising from past, present, and future contributions of farmers in conserving, improving, and making available plant genetic resources. So farmers' rights, arise from the fact that farmers have been contributing, are currently contributing, and will continue to contribute to the conservation of these plant genetic resources. And if you look at Article 9.3 of that treaty, it states that nothing in this article shall be interpreted to limit any rights that farmers have to save, use, exchange, and sell farm-saved seeds. So the key thing about that article is that it asserts the rights of farmers to save these seeds. Faith, I can't see the slides anymore. All right. So the key thing about this Article 9.3 is that it affirms that farmers have these rights to save, exchange their propagating material, but it doesn't give a lot of guidance on how these are to be implemented or realized. The next slide, please. So the idea of the farmers' rights was sort of brought about in order to counterbalance the property rights or patents that tend to reward innovations, but without recognizing, that these innovations or inventions are based on knowledge that has been accumulated over centuries by farmers. So some of these farmers' rights includes the rights to the protection of traditional knowledge, the right to participate in benefit sharing, and the right to participate in decision making. And of course, like I already mentioned, the right to save, use, exchange, and sell these farm-saved seeds. The next slide. So the WTO is a very important organization in terms of the governance of seeds, and especially the trade-related aspects of intellectual property rights, or TRIPS. So it sort of limits or restricts the freedom that countries have to sort of define that legal space for the realization of farmers' rights. Because Article 27 states that members shall provide for the protection of plant varieties, either by patents or an effective sui generis system. So it, already gives countries that ability to protect plant varieties using a system that is not very well defined. But of course, the general message here is that countries need to introduce some sort of legislations or laws to protect plant breeders' rights, the rights of plant breeders. But there are those who argue that TRIPS only provides minimum standards, and countries can then just use them as a guide in terms of coming up with their own domestic laws. So if that interpretation is correct, then of course the TRIPS leaves, an opportunity for national policies and laws to be developed that are compatible or respect the rights of farmers. The next slide, please. So one of the most, important conventions that, guide seed governance is the International Convention for the Protection of New Varieties of Plants, otherwise known as the OPOV Convention. It's quite an old convention. It was first developed in 1961. And it was revised in 1991. So the 1991 version is the one that is currently being used. And it obligates its members to grant and protect plant breeders' rights. And the plant breeders' rights is granted where the variety is new, distinct, uniform, and stable. So those are the conditions under which, a plant variety could be considered for protection. So Kenya acceded to 2016, and the convention became, came into force a month later. So Kenya became, this law is applicable in Kenya since 2016. But Kenya had been a member of the OPOV prior to 2016. So of course, there's no obligation to join the OPOV convention, but of course, there are those who claim that pressure is being exerted heavily through bilateral regional free trade agreements. So these agreements, some of these agreements have the condition that you must be a member or join the OPOV convention. So the OPOV convention, in a sense, has become, the sui generis system that WTO TRIPS talked about. The next slide. So the OPOV convention has been criticized a lot, and these are some of the reasons why it's been criticized. So one, it allows the appropriation and privatization of, results of age-old collective work. So all this work that farmers have been doing in selecting and preserving seeds over generations then becomes privatized through this convention. Of course, the argument here is that the initial source of the seeds that the plant breeders use are, of course, comes from what farmers have been using. And another thing is that it allows for the appropriation of peasant and indigenous varieties by granting ownership over discoveries. And once the seeds are privatized, the related laws prohibit or restrict their use and exchange. And there can be fines and imprisonment for saving and exchanging these seeds that have been bred by the plant breeders. And another thing is that, farmers tend to be guilty on suspicions. Instead of being found to have broken any of these laws, just the farmers that are then forced to prove that they have not used the plant breeder seeds. And generally, it undermines the traditional seed systems and prevents them from continuing to evolve. So one of the reasons that it does, one of the ways in which it does this is that you need authority from the breeder if you're going to utilize any variety as an initial source. So if you're going to use what's been produced or developed by the plant breeders to develop other varieties, you need authority from the plant breeder. But to me, when I look at this convention, so despite its negative aspects that it restricts these farmers' rights, there's a silver lining in the sense that it only applies to seeds that have been protected by the plant breeders' rights and not traditional varieties. So in a sense, it leaves a window of opportunity there for traditional varieties. But of course, one can argue that, all these seeds are essentially, these plant breeder seeds are essentially still coming from what farmers have been using over years. The next slide, please. So what are some of the Kenyan seed policies and regulations? So we'll just look at the seed policy 2010, the seed and plant varieties, which was revised in 2012. The Plant Health Inspectorate Service Act, we won't go much into that. But we look at the seed and plant varieties regulations of 2016 and the seed and plant varieties, plant variety evaluation and release regulations of 2016. Next slide, please. So one of the interesting things that came out of the 2010 Constitution is Article 11(3)(b), which states that the Parliament shall enact legislation to recognize and protect the ownership of indigenous seeds and plant varieties, their genetic and diverse characteristics, and their use by the communities of Kenya. So indigenous seeds are protected by our Kenyan Constitution. And I think this came out of the realization that seeds are very important, and for a country to have seed sovereignty, you need to protect seeds. Next slide, please. And then we have the National Seed Policy, which was developed in 2010. So it was developed in June 2010, and then the Constitution was promulgated, I think, in August. So this is sort of before the coming into force of the new Constitution. And it identifies several, challenges that are facing the seed sector in Kenya. So one of the things that it mentioned is insufficient certified seed materials. But it goes on to recognize both the formal and the informal seed sector. And it also notes that the informal sector accounts for a higher proportion of the seed planted by subsistence farmers. So it identifies these two sectors, and it also shows or highlights that most subsistence farmers actually depend on the informal sector. It makes several proposals, or some of the things it hopes to do. One is supporting public breeding institutions to produce seed varieties that are not attractive to the private sector. This is very important because the private sector tends to focus on seeds that would, make profits. But that means that a lot of potential seed varieties are then not neglected. It also sought to establish a mechanism and capacity for monitoring the performance of the informal seed sector. I don't know to what extent that has been successful, but it's also sought to build the capacity of the informal sector through providing advisory services with the view of transforming it to the formal sector. So ideally, trying to ensure that the informal sector becomes sort of formalized. Another one was to ensure that any material packaged and offered for sale is sourced only from registered seed enterprises, and they are of known quality. So this is where you start to worry about this policy, because when it says that any material that is packaged and offered for sale has to be from non-quality, then essentially that discriminates against traditional seeds, unless mechanisms are put in place to recognize that informal sector and put in place these measures to ensure that the quality of seeds from the informal sector can be known. Another one is to facilitate self-regulation of the seed sector. So this is often a demand of the private sector involved in seed management, that they want self-regulation. Whether that is good for the country remains to be seen. And also it's ought to harmonize some of the seed laws with the regional trade department, essentially to allow for easy movement of seeds across borders. The next slide. So then the next is the Seed and Plant Variety Act. And part 5 of that act, deals very comprehensively with plant breeders' rights. And if you look at it keenly, a lot of it is actually, picked verbatim from the UPO Convention. An interesting thing here is that the act does not distinguish between or give different guidelines for, certified seeds or plant breeder seeds and traditional or peasant seeds. So all types of seeds are actually lumped together. And there are also no provisions to operationalize the support to the informal seed sector that was outlined in the national seed policy. So even though the seed policy says that it's going to support and try to formalize the informal seed sector, the act itself has nothing, does not mention anything to do with that. But then it goes further and criminalizes farmers' customary rights to save, use, exchange, and sell farm saved seeds. So if you look at section 10.4, these are offenses. So regardless of whether you're dealing with certified plant breeder seeds or traditional seeds, if you do any of these 3 listed things, it's actually an offense. So if you're not registered as a seed merchant, imports, processes seed and packages seed for sale purposes, that's an offense. If you sell or display for sale any seed which does not correspond with the description in any certificate required to be produced or displayed under the Act, that is also an offense. If you offer for sale seed that fails to meet the requisite standards or has been rejected at any seed certification stage, that is also an offense. So essentially, if you look at this act, it means that the sale of seeds which goes on in our local market is actually going on illegal. It is an offense. And next slide. And then we have the Seed and Plant Varieties Seeds Regulations 2016. So it sort of follows the same guidelines and implements the Seed and Plant Varieties Act. Merchants are only allowed to sell government tested and certified seeds. And no seed shall be certified unless it's produced, inspected, sample tested, and complies with these standards that are set out in the 4th schedule. Now, these standards are very rigorous. And of course, these are beyond the reach of the informal seed sector. As with the Act, there's no distinction that is made between certified seeds and those seeds that need to undergo these procedures. So even the traditional seeds are expected to have undergone these rigorous procedures. But it goes on to establish a seed regulation committee whose functions include developing a seed policy, altering or modifying these certification standards,
Martin, you're muted from your side.
Hi, Martin, we can't hear you. It seems Dr. Oulu is having issues with his microphone. So at the moment before he comes back, I would request that we continue posting our questions via the chat box, as well as interacting. We can interact as well in the chat box and answer to each other questions and continue dialoguing.
Okay, Faith, Martin will soon be online. He dropped off because of internet, but we want, probably you could give more chances for members also to give some comments as he comes back on board about the seed governance aspects generally.
All right, thanks for that. Dear participants, you can contribute to what Dr. Oulu has been presenting and generally on seed governance. You can give your experiences and we can have a dialogue around the seed governance. You're welcome.
Sorry, Faith, I'm back.
Okay, that's okay. Welcome back.
Yeah, so as I was saying, the policy, the act, and the regulations mainly focuses on plant genetic materials rather than, you know, animal germ plasm. The next slide, please.
Martin, we cannot still hear you.
Sorry, you can't hear me.
I can hear you, and I would also like to request that, yeah, I can see actually you're concluding. I wanted to request that you conclude so that we can give an opportunity to the participants to contribute. I can hear you.
Thanks, Faith. So this is my last, I think, last slide. So if you look at the international regime of conventions and treaties that you know, govern seeds, there's very little room because a lot of the focus is actually on plant breeders' rights and very limited, or it limits farmers' rights. But when you come from the international arena to the local Kenyan scene, that little wiggle room that the international conventions allow or give is actually, you know, diminished further or closed altogether by these overzealous policy and laws which criminalize the sale and exchange of traditional seeds. And of course, there's that, what I mentioned, that very little to do with animal germ plasm. Next slide. So these are some of the recommendations that come out of this. I think one of the key things is to review the policy, act, and regulations, especially the policy because it was prepared before the current constitution, and there's already an advisory that all those policies and regulations done before then should be aligned with the constitution. But the act and the regulations simply because they do not respect the constitutional provision of protecting indigenous seeds. And of course, in the revision, then there should be a very comprehensive section on farmers' rights that, just as plant breeders' rights has currently been given a lot of space in the act and regulations. Anchor in law the support to the informal seed sector. That's very important because that seed sector, the informal sector, is what supports the majority of subsistence farmers. One thing that you notice is in developing many of these regulations, the act and regulations, a lot of it is driven by the corporates, the seed companies, and the farmer organizations and CSOs working on seed issues are not well, you know, represented. Usually, they're very small organizations dealing with village seed banks and so on. Thank you, and I invite reactions, comments, discussions on this. Back to you, Faith.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Oulu, for that interesting conversation or presentation. It's been quite a lot to cover within a short time, but also quite insightful about seed governance, the policies, the laws, and how we can protect farmers. So now, dear participants, I wish to welcome you to share your views, to participate in the dialogue, and also if you have any question, to pose it to Dr. Oulu so that we can continue dialoguing. You're welcome. Dr. Oulu, I can see there are 2 questions for you that have been posted on the screen. So you can look at them and address as we request other participants to keep on sending theirs.
Yes, thank you. I see on the screen there's a question about, please expand on the roles of women and youth marginalized people in seed governance in Kenya, and how we can protect the indigenous seed knowledge of women. I think the youth, the women are very important. These are the people who are, sort of keeping our seed heritage, not only in terms of the knowledge that they have, but in terms of them using the indigenous seeds and using of seeds, planting them is in fact the best way to conserve agrobiodiversity. To me, the most important thing that we can do is actually to recognize and protect, as the Constitution demands, these indigenous seeds and the knowledge systems around them. So I think this is very important. And this also goes to, protecting access to and the sharing of benefits that come out of these indigenous seeds. And that to me means relooking at our policies on seeds, regulations, and the act to ensure that we protect these indigenous seeds and the knowledge related to that. SDG 2 on genetic resources, what is the level of progress? I mean, some of the information that I have, reviews of progress in implementing some of these SDGs, shows that we are lagging behind. A lot of these targets were not met. And I think the discussions about the post 2020 biodiversity governance is going on, but from the reviews that have come, we have not been able to achieve many of these targets.
Okay, thank you very much. Dear participants, I would wish to request that if you want to contribute to the dialogue, please raise your hand so that you can have an opportunity of contributing. There's
what are we doing?
Yes, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. I can see a third question on the screen.
I wish to give the third question an opportunity to the person that has asked, that is Ochola Matsaba. You can contribute by speaking from your microphone so that we can hear your voice. We can also hear your question.
I would like to say thank you to Dr. Oulu for this nice presentation on city governance. As my question is, what is the role of indigenous knowledge when it comes to seed governance? Because we know that generally, generally speaking, or even worldwide, the indigenous knowledge is very important. But recently, as you may realize that, for example, if I talk about maize seeds, most of the seeds that I used to see when I was a small boy, nowadays I can't find it anywhere. So Maybe you can say something about that.
Yes, thank you very much. I think that's a very important question. We are losing a lot of our, plant varieties because of these restrictions that have been, placed on access to seeds by these policies and regulations. So farmers, there's a lot of the seed governance, the policies and that, there's a lot of focus on these certified seeds, which are very few, the variety is very limited. Because farmers over time, if they use these certified seeds, they will lose, that knowledge, the indigenous knowledge that is linked to the traditional varieties. And over time, we lose a lot of these varieties. It's very true what you mentioned. The seeds, the maize seeds, traditional maize seeds, we have lost, bananas, and so on. And the only way to protect these varieties is actually to ensure that farmers continue to use them freely, save, share, exchange them. And I think we have an opportunity here to review our policies to allow this. So even though internationally there's all that restrictions, but I think our local Kenyan policies have sort of gone overboard and even closed the little opportunities that we have to promote indigenous seeds and indigenous knowledge.
Okay, thank you. I can see Wanjiru would like to contribute to the dialogue. Wanjiru, please.
Hello. Thank you, Dr. Oulu, for your presentation and very enlightening. I'm very, very concerned because we've been working, perhaps I can introduce myself, Wanjiru Kamau. I've been working in the agroecology space as a consultant. And it always surprises me, how badly we are doing in terms of our own seed systems and our our genetic resources. But back to the presentation, I was interested to find out that there is a seed committee that was established by the act, the law. I would like to know who sits on this. Is it in the public domain who sits in this committee? And what is the level of farmer and CSO representation in this committee? And how do they get elected there? Because I think we need to, for us, our voice to be heard better, we need to have space occupancies. My next question would be, Kenya has ratified the International Treaty on Plant and Genetic Resources for Food and Agriculture. And I am aware that there was a process had been started on domesticating this international treaty, which was led by Gary, which is part of CALRO. Where did this process get stuck? Where is this process and why is it stuck? Because I think it highlights the importance of farmer seed, and I think if we domesticate it and put in law, it will align our law with our constitution. And finally, I'm aware that we have the Global Gene Bank in Norway. Who is in charge of the seeds there, and how does anyone interrogate or know what seed is there, and who is manning it? Just a few questions to jog our minds about our own seed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wanjiru, and glad to have you here. On the seed committee, I wish there was someone from the relevant government authorities to enlighten us on this. So I wouldn't know how much this, whether it's been constituted or not, and who are the members there. In terms of the ITP-GRFA, yes, Kenya is signatory to that. And I think Gary and the Gene Bank are the ones sort of involved or supposed to domesticate this. All I know is that even as at now, we do not have like standard operating procedures on how to access and share the benefits that arise from our process for food and agriculture. And I think this for us as ISFAA is one area that we want to work on to ensure that at least people know how to access these genetic resources, because we are losing a lot of these genetic resources, especially now that we have all this COVID-19 and people are realizing that, for example, our traditional vegetables are a very good way of dealing with some of these crises. And soon we will lose a lot of the genetic resources related to these indigenous vegetables. So that's the much I can say about this, but I hope that since this is a dialogue, some of the representatives from the government can chip in and enlighten us on some of these issues.
All right, thank you very much. In respect of time, I'll give an opportunity to 2 more participations. And then after that, I'll give an opportunity to Dr. Oulu to answer the questions that are projected. So first, I saw Pelam Kenya, there was a hand up, and Dr. Mary Nyasimi. So those are the 2 contributions to the dialogues. And then Dr. Oulu will answer the questions on the screen. And after that, we close the dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Dr. Martin, for that beautiful presentation. My question actually has been answered, but what I'm trying to wonder is, you find the certified seed promoters, they really advertise themselves, they really do a lot of publications and share. In what as when you're promoting the indigenous seed, do we also maybe have the same energy, vigor, and also publish about, document about the indigenous seed, share them widely so that we, those farmers can be able to understand and see the difference between those varieties? That's what I wanted to find out from the presentations. I mean, from the floor. Thank you.
All right, you can also take the other one from Dr. Mary Nyasimi and answer the 2 at the same time.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you to Dr. Martin for such a great presentation. My questions surrounds on the issue of the Seed and Plant Variety Act of 2012. Unless there's a new act, please let me know. And I think this Seed Act has failed to protect farmers from capitalist exploitation, especially the big companies and all that. Particularly in Part 2 and Section 3 of the Act that prohibits sale of uncertified seed. Uncertified seed, and the good old practice of selling and sharing seed is further criminalized, which only requires that if you're going to be selling seed, you must be in the variety index or the national variety list to be able to sell your seed. And to me, this limits farmers from selling their varieties, which they have been selling, exchanging for thousands of years and for new generations. So what is your take on that?
Thank you very much, Mary. Let me start by your question about the criminalization of traditional seed. It's very interesting, and that's why I call this contradiction. I mean, we know that farmers, local people are selling these seeds, exchanging them in the market. That this is going on. But our law says that it is a crime. So you wonder, how is it that the laws which are supposed to protect and encourage what the majority are already doing, criminalize it? So if you asked me, my question probably would be, when is the police going to start arresting those who are selling seed? But it shows you how ridiculous sometimes our policies can be. And to me, it's a pointer to how do we make policies? How do we make legislation on whose behalf, for example, some of these seed laws that criminalize the indigenous seed sector done, and knowing very well the seed policy itself shows states that indigenous seeds is what supports the majority of subsistence farmers. But I think we have an opportunity to relook at these policies and these legislations. And I like the article in the Constitution which is the highest law of the land. So essentially, we can get consolation from the fact that all these legislations that do not conform to that article of the Constitution that protects indigenous knowledge and indigenous seeds is unconstitutional. So I think from there, that's a very good place to start. Someone asked about what are we doing to publish, to share information about the indigenous seeds. I think there are a lot of, there's several organizations that have been working with farmers in terms of, village seed banks and so on, trying to promote saving and exchange of seeds. But the thing is, because of that lack of government support or even recognition of these efforts, they do not have that support. They are very small organizations. And I think if the proposal in the seed policy 2010 of supporting the informal sector, if that was implemented, then of course we would see a lot of these publications being done, farmers being supported to have their seed banks and so on. But I think that has not happened. Back to you, Faith.
Sorry, I realized I was muted. So thank you, Dr. Oulu. So to finalize our dialogues today, you can go through what has been posted on the screen quickly and summarize on it. And then I'll request the participants to check the chat box. I've posted the ISFAA social media pages there, so we can continue the dialogue there. It doesn't mean that since this session is almost over that the dialogue stops, so we can continue speaking, we can continue interacting. To you, Dr. Oulu.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy that ISFAA has been able to organize this dialogue, and I think we need to have more of such dialogue so that we can learn from each other, know what are some of the issues that farmers are, challenges farmers are facing, and how can we tackle them together. And I'm happy that you organize this opportunity, and I hope that we have more opportunities to discuss some of these issues. Someone was asking about whether we have a law that protects, it's a law policy on indigenous knowledge. There is the Traditional Knowledge Act 2016 that I think is still quite new, but it's I think that's probably the law that focuses more directly on indigenous knowledge and traditional knowledge. Otherwise, I'm very glad that this happened, and I hope that we continue the discussion beyond this. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. That was a wonderful presentation, a wonderful interaction, and the dialogues with the participants. It's been very nice hosting you, and we look forward to hosting you more and more. The dialogues will be happening after every 2 weeks, and our next dialogue will be, our speaker for the next dialogue will be Nancy Rapando, and she will be speaking about agroecology and climate action. And the question will be, can agroecology support African countries in meeting their NDC aspirations? And this will be happening on Wednesday, 3rd, 2021, starting from 2 p.m. We will still, since we have your email addresses, we will still send you the reminders. And if you've already registered, you don't need to register again. We will resend you the link for you to join in. And also you can continue communicating via the social media pages. And this brings us to the end of our dialogue today.
Hey, Faith.
Yes.
Oh, maybe just in the next 1 minute, let's let all of us just share what are you going to do next. We've shared a link on the chat, and you can just click on the link, then just add, even if it's just one word, what are you going to do next?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We have someone has said next they're going to read more about seed governance systems. Just click on the link that we provided on the chat. But at the same time, just on your browser, you can be able to type slido.com. Then once you input the code 621653, you'll be able to add your input or just add something. So what are you going to do next? At least we have someone who has said they're going to read more about seed governance systems. Hopefully, at least you can be able, just in the next 1 minute, you can be able to have more people can be able to add what they are planning to do next. So again, share the link on the chat. Kindly just in the next 1 minute. Yes, we have learned more about seed banking, especially communal. We have going forward to share information and get more in-depth knowledge on what has been presented. Thank you. Conduct more research on seed laws. Seek to support some of our lead farmers, qualify as seed breeders and merchants. Yes, follow up with Dr. Oulu on the legal implications of seed governance on indigenous seed. Read more about indigenous seed related policies and regulations. Do a write-up on issues. Learn more about seed governance. Find out the relationship between seed governance and climate change. Multiply and share my unique seeds with the farmers. Keep the conversation and highlight the plight of indigenous seeds and their usefulness. Read more on the policies related to seed. Thank you for all those who have shared what they are planning to do next. Faith?
Okay, thank you very much, Bob. That is a way forward for us all, and we've seen what all of us would like to do once we leave here. On my part, I would like also to know much about the seed committee. So probably that is something I would post to all of us, and specifically Dr. Oulu, maybe to find out about more about that on what Wanjiro asked. So now, dear participants, this is the end of our dialogue today. It has been very interesting. It has been nice having you as part of the team, and we look forward to hosting you come 3rd of August 2021, starting from 2 p.m. And we are looking forward to hear what Nancy has to say on agroecology and climate change, and can agroecology support African countries in meeting their NDC aspirations. Thank you very much. Have a good evening and have a good day to you all.
Thank you, Father.
Thank you.